The common starling, also known as the European starling, or in the British Isles just the starling, is a medium-sized passerine bird in the starling family, Sturnidae. It is about 20 centimeters long and has glossy black plumage with a metallic sheen, which is speckled with white at some times of year. The legs are pink and the bill is black in winter and yellow in summer. Young birds have browner plumage than the adults. It is a noisy bird, especially in communal roosts and other gregarious situations, with an unmusical but varied song. Its gift for mimicry has been noted in literature including the Mabinogion and the works of Pliny the Elder and William Shakespeare. The common starling has about a dozen subspecies breeding in open habitats across its native range in temperate Europe and Western Asia, and it has been introduced to Australia, New Zealand, Canada, United States, Mexico, Peru, Argentina, the Falkland Islands, Brazil, Chile, Uruguay, South Africa and Fiji. This bird is resident in southern and western Europe and southwestern Asia, while northeastern populations migrate south and west in winter within the breeding range and also further south to Iberia and North Africa. The common starling builds an untidy nest in a natural or artificial cavity in which 4 or 5 glossy, pale blue eggs are laid. These take 2 weeks to hatch and the young remain in the nest for another 3 weeks. There are normally 1 or 2 breeding attempts each year. This species is omnivorous, taking a wide range of invertebrates, as well as seeds and fruit. It is hunted by various mammals and birds of prey, and is host to a range of external and internal parasites. Large flocks typical of this species can be beneficial to agriculture by controlling invertebrate pests. However, starlings can also be pests themselves when they feed on fruit and sprouting crops. Common starlings may also be a nuisance through the noise and mess caused by the large urban roosts. Introduced populations in particular have been subjected to a range of controls, including culling, but these have had limited success except in preventing the colonization of Western Australia. The species has declined in numbers in parts of northern and western Europe since the 1980s due to fewer grassland invertebrates being available as food for growing chicks. Despite this, its huge global population is not thought to be declining significantly, so the common starling is classified as being of least concern by the International Union for Conservation of Nature, Taxonomy and Systematics. The common starling was first described by Linnaeus in his Systema Naturae in 1758 under its current binomial name. Sturnus and vulgaris are derived from the Latin for starling and common, respectively. The Old English stare, later stare, and the Latin sturnus are both derived from an unknown Indo-European root dating back to the 2nd millennium BC. Starling was first recorded in the 11th century, when it referred to the juvenile of the species, but by the 16th century it had already largely supplanted stare to refer to birds of all ages. The older name is referenced in William Butler Yeats' poem The Stare's Nest by My Window. The International Ornithological Congress preferred English vernacular name is common starling. The starling family, Sturnidae, is an entirely Old World group apart from introductions elsewhere, with the greatest numbers of species in Southeast Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. The genus Sturnus is polyphyletic and relationships between its members are not fully resolved. The closest relation of the common starling is the spottler starling. The non-migratory spottler starling may be descended from a population of ancestral S. vulgaris that survived in an Iberian refugium during an Ice Age retreat. and mitochondrial gene studies suggest that it could be considered as a subspecies of the common starling. There is more genetic variation between common starling populations than between nominate common starling and spotless starling, although common starling remains unknown from the Middle Pleistocene. Part of the problem in resolving relationships in the Sturnidae is the paucity of the fossil record for the family as a whole. Subspecies. There are several subspecies of the common starling, which vary clinally in size and the color tone of the adult plumage. The gradual variation over geographic range and extensive intergradation means that acceptance of the various subspecies varies between authorities. Subspecies. Birds from Fair Isle, St Kilda and the Outer Hebrides are intermediate in size between S. v. Zetlandicus and the nominate form, and the subspecies placement varies according to the authority. The dark juveniles typical of these island forms are occasionally found in mainland Scotland and elsewhere, indicating some gene flow from Faroensis zetlandicus, subspecies formerly considered to be isolated. Several other subspecies have been named, but are generally no longer considered valid. Most are intergrades that occur where the ranges of various subspecies meet. These include S.V. Rothenus mens beer 1891 and S.V. Jikawi butolan 1904, which are intergrades between vulgaris and polteratsky from western Russia, S.V. Gregarious Chusi 1905 and S.V. Balkanicus butolan and Harms 1909. Intergrades between vulgaris and tauricus from the southern Balkans to central Ukraine and throughout Greece to the Bosphorus, and S.V. Heinrich Stressmann 1928, an intergrade between Caucasus and Nobilia in northern Iran. S.V. Persepolis Ticehurst 1928 from southern Iran is very similar to S.V. vulgaris, and it is not clear whether it is a distinct resident population or simply migrants from southeastern Europe. Description: the common starling is 19 to 23 centimeters long, with a wingspan of 31 to 44 centimeters and a weight of 58 to 101 grams. Amongst standard measurements, the wing chord is 11.8 to 13.8 centimeters. The tail is 5.8 to 6.8 centimeters. The culmen is 2.5 to 3.2 centimeters and the tarsus is 2.7 to 3.2 centimeters. The plumage is iridescent black, glossed purple or green, and spangled with white, especially in winter. The underparts of adult male common starlings are less spotted than those of adult females at a given time of year. The throat feathers of males are long and loose and are used in display, while those of females are smaller and more pointed. The legs are stout and pinkish or grayish-red. The bill is narrow and conical with a sharp tip. In the winter it is brownish-black, but in summer, females have lemon-yellow beaks while males have yellow bills with blue-gray bases. Molting occurs once a year in late summer after the breeding season has finished. The fresh feathers are prominently tipped white above, which gives the bird a speckled appearance. The reduction in the spotting in the breeding season is achieved through the white feather tips largely wearing off. Juveniles are gray-brown and by the first winter resemble adults, though often retaining some brown juvenile feathering, especially on the head. They can usually be sexed by the color of the irises, rich brown in males, mouse brown or gray in females. Estimating the contrast between an iris and the central, always dark pupil is 97% accurate in determining sex, rising to 98% if the length of of the throat feathers is also considered. The common starling is mid-sized by both starling standards and passerine standards. It is readily distinguished from other mid-sized passerines, such as thrushes, Icterides or small corvids, by its relatively short tail, sharp blade-like bill, round-bellied shape and strong, sizable legs. In flight, its strongly pointed wings and dark coloration are distinctive, while on the ground its strange, somewhat waddling gait is also characteristic. The coloring and build usually distinguish this bird from other starlings, although the closely related spotless starling may be physically distinguished by the lack of iridescent spots in adult breeding plumage. Like most terrestrial starlings, the common starling moves by walking or running, rather than hopping. The flight is quite strong and direct. Their triangular-shaped wings beat very rapidly, and periodically the birds glide for a short way without losing much height before resuming paired flight. When in a flock, the birds take off almost simultaneously, wheel and turn in unison, form a compact mass and trail off into a wispy stream, bunch up again and land in a coordinated fashion. Common starling on migration can fly at 60 to 80 km per hour and cover up to 1,000 to 1,500 km. Several terrestrial starlings, including those in the genus Sturnus, have adaptations of the skull and muscles that help with feeding by probing. This adaptation is most strongly developed in the common starling, where the protractor muscles responsible for opening the jaw are enlarged and the skull is narrow, allowing the eye to be moved forward to peer down the length of the bill. This technique involves inserting the bill into the ground and opening it as a way of searching for hidden food items. Common starlings have the physical traits that enable them to use this feeding technique, which has undoubtedly helped the species spread far and wide. In Iberia, the western Mediterranean and northwest Africa, the common starling may be confused with the closely related spotless starling, the plumage of which, as its name implies, has a more uniform color. At close range it can be seen that the latter has longer throat feathers, a fact particularly noticeable when it sings. Voice: the common starling is a noisy bird. Its song consists of a wide variety of both melodic and mechanical-sounding noises as part of a ritual succession of sounds. The male is the main songster and engages in bouts of song lasting for a minute or more. Each of these typically includes 4 varieties of song type, which follow each other in a regular order without pause. The bout starts with a series of pure tone whistles, and these are followed by the main part of the song. A number of variable sequences that often incorporate snatches of song mimicked from other species of bird and various naturally occurring or man-made noises. The structure and simplicity of the sound mimicked is of greater importance than the frequency with which it occurs. Each sound clip is repeated several times before the bird moves on to the next. After this variable section comes a number of types of repeated clicks followed by a final burst of high-frequency song, again formed of several types. Each bird has its own repertoire, with more proficient birds having a range of up to 35 variable song types and as many as 14 types of clicks. Males sing constantly as the breeding period approaches and perform less often once pairs have bonded. In the presence of a female, a male sometimes flies to his nest and sings from the entrance, apparently attempting to entice the female in. Older birds tend to have a wider repertoire than younger ones. Those males that engage in longer bouts of singing and that have wider repertoires attract mates earlier and have greater reproductive success than others. Females appear to prefer mates with more complex songs, perhaps because this indicates greater experience or longevity. Having a complex song is also useful in defending a territory and deterring less experienced males from encroaching. Singing also occurs outside the breeding season, taking place throughout the year apart from the molting period. The songsters are more commonly male, although females also sing on occasion. The function of such out-of-season song is poorly understood. 11 other types of call have been described, including a flock call, threat call, attack call, snarl call, and copulation call. The alarm call is a harsh scream, and while foraging together, common starlings squabble incessantly. They chatter while roosting and bathing, making a great deal of noise that can cause irritation to people living nearby. When a flock of common starlings is flying together, the synchronized movements of the bird's wings make a distinctive whooshing sound that can be heard hundreds of meters away. Behavior and ecology. The common starling is a highly gregarious species, especially in autumn and winter. Although flock size is highly variable, huge noisy flocks, murmurations, may form near roosts. These dense concentrations of birds are thought to be a defense against attacks by birds of prey such as peregrine falcons or Eurasian sparrowhawks. Flocks form a tight sphere-like formation in flight, frequently expanding and contracting and changing shape, seemingly without any sort of leader. Each common starling changes its course and speed as a result of the movement of its closest neighbors. Very large roosts, exceptionally up to 1.5 million birds, can form in city centers, woodlands or reed beds, causing problems with the droppings. These may accumulate up to 30 centimeters deep, killing trees by the concentration of chemicals. In smaller amounts, the droppings act as a fertilizer, and therefore woodland managers may try to move roosts from one area of a wood to another to benefit from the soil enhancement and avoid large, toxic deposits. Huge flocks of more than 1 million common starlings may be observed just before sunset in spring in southwestern Jutland, Denmark, over the seawood marshlands of Tonda and Esbjerg municipalities between Tonda and Rye. They gather in March until northern Scandinavian birds leave for the breeding ranges by mid-April. The swarm behavior creates complex shapes silhouetted against the sky, a phenomenon known locally as sort-sol. Flocks of anything from 5 to 50,000 common starlings form in areas of the UK just before sundown during midwinter. These flocks are commonly called murmurations. Feeding. The common starling is largely insectivorous and feeds on both pest and other arthropods. The food range includes spiders, craneflies, moths, mayflies, dragonflies, damselflies, grasshoppers, earwigs, lacewings, caddisflies, flies, beetles, sawflies, bees, wasps and ants. Both adults and larvae are consumed, and common starlings will also feed on earthworms, snails, small amphibians and lizards. While the consumption of invertebrates is necessary for successful breeding, common starlings are omnivorous and can also eat grains, seeds, fruits, nectar and food waste if the opportunity arises. The Sturnidae differ from most birds in that they cannot easily metabolize foods containing high levels of sucrose, although they can cope with other fruits such as grapes and cherries. The isolated Azores subspecies of the common starling eats the eggs of the endangered roseate tern. Measures are being introduced to reduce common starling populations by culling before the terns return to the breeding colonies in spring. There are several methods by which common starlings obtain the food, but for the most part, they forage close to the ground, taking insects from the surface or just underneath. Generally, common starlings prefer foraging amongst short-cropped grasses and are often found among grazing animals or perched on the backs, where they will also feed on the mammal's external parasites. Large flocks may engage in a practice known as roller feeding, where the birds at the back of the flock continually fly to the front where the feeding opportunities are best. The larger the flock, the nearer individuals are to one another while foraging. Flocks often feed in one place for some time, and return to previous successfully foraged sites. There are three types of foraging behavior observed in the common starling. Probing involves the bird plunging its beak into the ground randomly and repetitively until an insect has been found, and is often accompanied by bill gaping, where the bird opens its beak in the soil to enlarge a hole. This behavior, first described by Konrad Lorenz and given the German term speckled, is also used to create and widen holes in plastic garbage bags. It takes time for young common starlings to perfect this technique, and because of this the diet of young birds will often contain fewer insects. Hawking is the capture of flying insects directly from the air, and lunging is the less common technique of striking forward to catch a moving invertebrate on the ground. Earthworms are caught by pulling from soil. Common starlings that have periods without access to food, or have a reduction in the hours of light available for feeding, compensate by increasing the body mass by the deposition of fat. Nesting unpaired males find a suitable cavity and begin to build nests in order to attract single females, often decorating the nest with ornaments such as flowers and fresh green material, which the female later disassembles upon accepting him as a mate. The amount of green material is not important, as long as some is present, but the presence of herbs in the decorative material appears to be significant in attracting a mate. The scent of plants such as yarrow acts as an olfactory attractant to females. The males sing throughout much of the construction, and even more so when a female approaches his nest. Following copulation, the male and female continue to build the nest. Nests may be in any type of hole. Common locations include inside hollow trees, buildings, tree stumps, and man-made nest boxes. S.V. Zetlandicus typically breeds in crevice and holes in cliffs, a habitat only rarely used by the nominate form. Nests are typically made out of straw, dry grass and twigs with an inner lining made up of feathers, wool and soft leaves. Construction usually takes 4 or 5 days and may continue through incubation. Common starlings are both monogamous and polygamous, although broods are generally brought up by one male and one female. Occasionally the pair may have an extra helper. Pairs may be part of a colony, in which case several other nests may occupy the same and nearby trees. Males may mate with a second female while the first is still on the nest. The reproductive success of the bird is poorer in the second nest than it is in the primary nest, and is better when the male remains monogamous. Breeding takes place during the spring and summer. Following copulation, the female lays eggs on a daily basis over a period of several days. If an egg is lost during this time, she will lay another to replace it. There are normally 4 or 5 eggs that are ovoid in shape and pale blue or occasionally white, and they commonly have a glossy appearance. The color of the eggs seems to have evolved through the relatively good visibility of blue at low light levels. The egg size is 26.5 to 34.5 mm in length and 20.0 to 22.5 mm in maximum diameter. Incubation lasts 13 days, although the last egg laid may take 24 hours longer than the first to hatch. Both parents share the responsibility of brooding the eggs, but the female spends more time incubating them than does the male, and is the only parent to do so at night when the male returns to the communal roost. The young are born blind and naked. They develop light fluffy down within 7 days of hatching and can see within 9 days. Once the chicks are able to regulate the body temperature, about 6 days after hatching, the adults largely cease removing droppings from the nest. Prior to that, the fouling would wet both the chicks' plumage and the nest material, thereby reducing their effectiveness as insulation and increasing the risk of of chilling the hatchlings. Nestlings remain in the nest for 3 weeks, where they are fed continuously by both parents. Fledglings continue to be fed by the parents for another 1 or 2 weeks. A pair can raise up to 3 broods per year, frequently reusing and relining the same nest, although 2 broods is typical, or just one north of 48 degrees north. Within 2 months, most juveniles will have molted and gained the first basic plumage. They acquire their adult plumage the following year. As with other passerines, the nest is kept clean and the chicks' fecal sacs are removed by the adults. Intraspecific brood parasites are common in common starling nests. Female floaters, present in colonies, often lay eggs in another pair's nest. Fledglings have also been reported to invade their own or neighboring nests and evict a new brood. Common starling nests have a 48% to 79% rate of successful fledging. Although only 20% of nestlings survive to breeding age, the adult survival rate is closer to 60%. The average lifespan is about 2 to 3 years, with a longevity record of 22 years 11 meters. Predators and parasites. A majority of starling predators are avian. The typical response of starling groups is to take flight, with a common sight being undulating flocks of starling flying high in quick and agile patterns. Their abilities in flight are seldom matched by birds of prey. Adult common starlings are hunted by hawks such as the northern goshawk and Eurasian sparrowhawk, and falcons including the peregrine falcon, Eurasian hobby and common kestrel. Slower raptors like black and red kites, eastern imperial eagle, common buzzard and Australasian harrier tend to take the more easily caught fledglings or juveniles. While perched in groups by night, they can be vulnerable to owls, including the little owl, long-eared owl, short-eared owl, barn owl, tawny owl and Eurasian eagle owl. More than 20 species of hawk, owl and falcon are known to occasionally predate feral starlings in North America, though the most regular predators of adults are likely to be urban-living peregrine falcons or merlins. Common miners sometimes evict eggs, nestlings and adult common starlings from the nests, and the lesser honeyguide, a brood parasite, uses the common starling as a host. Starlings are more commonly the culprits rather than victims of nest eviction, however, especially towards other starlings and woodpeckers. Nests can be raided by animals capable of climbing to them, such as stoats, raccoons and squirrels, and cats may catch the unwary. Common starlings are host to a wide range of parasites. A survey of 300 common starlings from 6 U.S. states found that all had at least one type of parasite. 99% had external fleas, mates or ticks, and 95% carried internal parasites, mostly various types of worm. Blood-sucking species leave the host when it dies, but other external parasites stay on the corpse. A bird with a deformed bill was heavily infested with Malaphaga lice, presumably due to its inability to remove vermin. The hen flea is the most common flea in the nests. The small, pale house sparrow flea C. fringilli is also occasionally found there and probably arises from the habit of its main host of taking over the nests of other species. This flea does not occur in the U.S. even on house sparrows. Lice include Menacanthus euristomus, Bruellia nebulosa and Stumidoicus sterni. Other arthropod parasites include exodsticks and mites such as Analgopsis passerinus, Boidiostumi, Derminosis galanae, Ornithonesis bursa, Silviarum, Proctophylodes species, Tyrannosoides truncatus and Trauesartia rosteri. The hen mite D. Gallinae is itself preyed upon by the predatory mite Androrlaelaps casalis. The presence of this control on numbers of the parasitic species may explain why birds are prepared to reuse old nests. Flying insects that parasitize common starlings include the lousefly Amithymia nigricornis and the saprophagus fly Camuhemapterus. The latter species breaks off the feathers of its host and lives on the fats produced by growing plumage. Larvae of the moth Hoffmanophilus eudosperitella are nest scavengers, which feed on animal material such as feces or dead nestlings. Protozoan blood parasites of the genus Hemoproteus have been found in common starlings, but better-known pest is the brilliant scarlet nematode Syngamus trachea. This worm moves from the lungs to the trachea and may cause its host to suffocate. In Britain, the rook and the common starling are the most infested wild birds. Other recorded internal parasites include the spiny-headed worm Prosthorhynchus transversus. Common starlings may contract avian tuberculosis, avian malaria, and retrovirus-induced lymphomas. Captive starlings often accumulate excess iron in the liver, a condition that can be prevented by adding black tea leaves to the food.